Unseen strength. The story revolves around a grandmother whose quiet resilience hides decades of pain, love, and sacrifice. Her days begin long before the sun stretches over the horizon. She wakes in a small, faded house that still smells faintly of the rose perfume she used to wear when her husband was alive. The floorboards creak under her steps, the sound echoing like an old lullaby in a home that once overflowed with laughter. The kettle whistles, and she pours herself a cup of tea into the same chipped cup she has used for years, a quiet ritual of comfort in a world that no longer waits for her pace. She looks around at the framed photographs on the wall, dust collecting on faces that rarely visit now. Her children, her grandchildren, all grown, busy, far away. She doesn't blame them. She never does. She just whispers a soft prayer each morning that they are safe and happy. She used to be the heart of the home. Her kitchen was the warmth of the family, her food the reason everyone gathered. Every celebration started with her hands stirring, chopping, kneading love into every meal. Her laughter filled the air, her arms always open, her lap always ready for little ones who ran to her calling her name. But time, that unkind thief, has taken many things, her husband, her energy, her youth, and replaced them with silence. Now the kitchen sits clean and untouched, her apron folded neatly, her table set for one. She spends her afternoons sitting near the window, the light falling across her wrinkled hands like gold lace. She watches the street, hoping for a familiar face, a car slowing down in front of her gate. She has learned not to expect calls, only to appreciate them when they come. Sometimes her phone rings and her heart leaps, but it's just a wrong number and she smiles anyway. At least someone thought of calling. Her neighbors pass by, waving politely, and she waves back, her smile gentle but weary. She remembers the time she used to visit others, carry homemade soup to the sick, hold the babies of new mothers so they could rest. She was always giving, always present, always strong. People used to say she was made of something special, not just kindness, but a kind of steel wrapped in tenderness. That steel still lives in her, though it hides behind tired eyes and trembling fingers. Sometimes at night, she sits by the old radio her husband used to love. She turns the dial until she finds the station that plays songs from their youth. The melody drifts through the air, carrying her back to a time when she danced barefoot in the yard, her dress swirling, his arms around her waist. She can almost hear his voice saying her name, the way he did when he came home from work with dusty shoes and tired eyes. She closes her eyes and lets the music hold her, the way memories do when words can no longer reach. One day, a knock at the door startles her. She opens it slowly, and there stands a young boy from the neighborhood, holding a small bag of groceries. He stammers, saying his mother sent them, that they had extra. She thanks him with trembling hands and invites him in for a moment. He sits awkwardly, looking around, and she offers him cookies from a tin she keeps for guests she never has. He takes one and smiles. It's a small thing, but her heart feels lighter. For the first time in a long while, her home feels alive again. When he leaves, she watches from the window as he runs down the street, his laughter carrying in the air. She looks at the bag on her counter, bread, fruit, a carton of milk, and feels tears sting her eyes, not from pity, but from gratitude. It reminds her that kindness hasn't disappeared from the world, that love can still find her even in her quietest days. She sits down, places her hand on the table, and whispers to the empty room, "I'm still here." And though no one hears her, the walls seem to listen, the air seems to soften, and the world outside, just for a moment, feels gentle again. Lost connection. She feels forgotten by her family, especially by the younger generation who once adored her. There was a time when her home was filled with voices, laughter bouncing off the walls, little feet running through the hallways, excited chatter about school and playground adventures. She had been the center of it all, the warm presence that everyone relied on for comfort and care. She remembers the way her grandchildren used to climb into her lap, arms wrapped around her neck, faces glowing with trust and love. She remembers reading them stories, her voice soft but full of life, each word carrying a piece of herself into their imaginations. Those days, though, are like fragile photographs now, faded with time, tucked into the corners of her memory. Now the house is quiet. The echoes of their laughter are replaced by a stillness so heavy it presses against her chest. She sits in her favorite chair, one that has molded itself perfectly to her shape over the years, and stares at the walls lined with pictures of people who no longer visit as often. The photographs smile back at her, frozen in time, and she runs her fingers along the edges, tracing the outlines of faces that seem almost like strangers now. She longs for the days when the house smelled of baking bread and crayons and the soft scent of little ones who ran through the rooms, always eager to share a story or a hug. She thinks of the calls that never come, the messages that go unanswered, the birthdays she celebrates quietly with a small slice of cake and a wistful sigh. Her children are grown, busy with their lives, their own families, and their own challenges. She does not resent them. She understands the pull of obligations and the passage of time, yet she cannot help but feel the sharp sting of absence, the hollow ache of feeling invisible in the lives of those she once held close. She remembers the excited squeals when she would open the door to their visits, and now the door remains closed more often than open. Sometimes she drifts through the rooms, touching the objects left behind. Toys gathering dust, handmade cards on the shelves, photographs of events she missed because she didn't know they were happening. Each item is a bittersweet reminder of the connection she once had and the distance that has grown between them. She wonders if they remember the small things, the stories she told, the advice she gave, the comfort she offered. She wonders if they even notice her absence anymore, or if she has slowly slipped from their daily thoughts into a background of occasional remembrance. Even in the quiet, she makes herself useful. She tends to her small garden, watering the flowers, pruning the bushes, and keeping the paths clean. She hums softly while she works, a melody of patience and hope that perhaps, someday, someone will pause to notice her efforts. She bakes bread sometimes, not for anyone in particular, but because it fills the house with a warmth that reminds her of the times when the kitchen was alive with chatter and smiles. Each loaf carries a whisper of her love, even if no one is there to taste it. The television is on for company, though she barely watches it. The stories play across the screen, full of families and gatherings, and she feels a pang, a reflection of her own isolation mirrored in fiction. She remembers birthday parties she wasn't invited to, holidays spent alone, milestones celebrated quietly in her own way. And yet, despite the loneliness, she carries herself with quiet dignity. She does not beg for attention. She does not demand visits. She simply hopes, silently, that the connection that has frayed over time can somehow be repaired, that the love she poured into her family over decades is not forgotten, that one day the younger generation who once adored her will pause long enough to see the heart that has never stopped loving them. Evenings are the hardest. She sits by the window, watching shadows lengthen across the yard. She listens for sounds of life outside, children laughing, neighbors talking, footsteps on the street, and she imagines it is them, returning, remembering, wanting to share a moment with her again. She closes her eyes and breathes slowly, holding on to the hope that the ties of family, though stretched and weathered, are not broken, that somewhere someone carries a memory of her love in their heart. Silent memories, each corner of her home holds echoes of her past, her late husband's laughter, her children's footsteps, her own dreams left behind. The house feels alive, though no one walks its floors anymore. Every room carries a story. Every object whispers a memory, and every shadow seems to hum with the life that once filled these walls. The living room, with its worn sofa and faded rug, still remembers the evenings when her husband would sit beside her reading the newspaper or telling her stories that made her laugh until her ribs ached. She can hear his voice sometimes, soft and warm, carrying across the room as if he had never left, as if the years of absence had only been a pause, a long breath between moments that she still clings to. The kitchen smells faintly of vanilla and cinnamon, though she hasn't baked in days. It's the scent of past holidays, birthdays, and family gatherings that once made the house feel like the center of the universe. She remembers the tiny hands of her children reaching for the cookie jar, the sound of their laughter bouncing against the cupboards, and the way they would argue over who got the biggest slice of cake. She remembers standing at the counter, rolling dough, chopping vegetables, singing softly to herself. The rhythm of her life tied to the rhythm of her family. Now, the counters are still, the drawers untouched, and the oven cold, yet she can almost hear the symphony of the past playing quietly in her mind. In the bedrooms, the beds sit made, untouched by small bodies that once tumbled into them after long days of play and school. She walks through the halls and runs her fingers along the walls, imagining the years gone by, imagining the little footsteps that once raced to greet her. Her children's laughter echoes like ghosts, playful and fleeting, filling the spaces with warmth that now feels like a distant dream. She remembers reading bedtime stories, holding their hands, soothing their worries, and feeling the pure joy of being their safe place, their haven, the one who knew all their secrets and loved them anyway. Her own dreams, however, are the quietest of all the memories. She had ambitions once, ideas of adventures, places she wanted to see, books she wanted to write, and moments she hoped to claim for herself. But life, in its relentless pace, demanded more of her, her energy, her time, her love. She gave it all to her family, shaping their lives, guiding them, protecting them, and in doing so, her own dreams were tucked away in drawers, stacked beneath responsibilities, hidden behind smiles and comforting words. Sometimes she opens a drawer and finds a forgotten notebook, the edges worn, pages still waiting to be written on. And she touches it gently, feeling the weight of what could have been, what still lingers inside her heart. Even the garden outside holds stories. Each plant, each flower was planted with intention and care, a testament to seasons of patience and hope. The roses her husband once loved bloom every spring, their scent carrying memories of quiet afternoons together, hands brushing as they tended the soil, laughter shared under the sun. She walks among the flowers slowly now, her steps careful, feeling the echoes of every past moment in the rustle of leaves and the song of the wind. At night, she sits by the window, the house quiet except for the ticking of the old clock that has never stopped. She looks at the moonlight falling across the rooms and remembers the nights of whispered conversations, gentle reassurances, and shared dreams. Her hands rest on her lap, wrinkled and worn, carrying decades of love and sacrifice. The walls seem to listen, as if they too are holding the memories, safeguarding the laughter, the tears, the unspoken words that defined a life. She breathes deeply, letting the silence wrap around her, holding both sorrow and gratitude, knowing that even though time has moved on, the echoes of her past are never truly gone, and that every memory, no matter how quiet, still lives within the heart of her home. A small act of love, one unexpected moment of kindness reminds her she's still seen, still loved, still needed. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that had grown so familiar in her quiet life that she often lost track of time. The sun filtered gently through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns across the floor, and she sat in her favorite chair, the one that had molded to her shape over decades, sipping a cup of lukewarm tea. The house was silent, except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the faint hum of the refrigerator. She was used to these moments of stillness, accustomed to the solitude that had become her companion over the years, yet sometimes a quiet loneliness pressed against her chest with surprising weight. She had just settled into her thoughts, reminiscing about past birthdays and holidays, remembering laughter that now felt like a distant echo, when there was a soft knock at the door. It was gentle, almost hesitant, but enough to startle her from her reverie. She rose slowly, careful not to rush, and opened the door. Standing there was a young neighbor she had only seen occasionally, clutching a small package wrapped in brown paper. The boy looked down at his feet, shuffling nervously, as if unsure whether she would welcome him. "Hi," he said softly. "My mom said you might need some things from the store. We had extra." His words tumbled out quickly. apologetic yet warm, carrying with them a sincerity that made her heart ache. She blinked, surprised, feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in months, perhaps even years. She reached for the package, her hands trembling slightly, and thanked him, her voice catching. The boy smiled faintly, and in that moment the air between them seemed to hum with a quiet connection, the kind that doesn't need words to be understood. She invited him in for a moment, insisting that he at least sit and rest his legs. He hesitated but accepted, and she offered him a small plate of cookies she had baked days ago, the kind she always kept for guests who rarely came. He took one, the chocolate chips slightly melted from the warmth of the kitchen, and smiled again, this time more fully, more easily. She watched him as he ate, noticing the small gestures, the way his eyes lit up at the taste, the way he fidgeted with the edge of the tablecloth, the polite way he looked around the room. It reminded her of her grandchildren at that age, the way their presence had once filled her life with purpose and joy. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at her. "Thank you," he said simply. "I hope your day gets better." That simple sentence, unpolished but heartfelt, resonated deeply within her. It was more than words. It was recognition, acknowledgement, and kindness rolled into a small act that carried weight far beyond its size. She watched him run down the street, his laughter mingling with the wind, and for the first time in weeks, perhaps months, she felt a lightness settle over her chest. The groceries sat on her counter, ordinary items that would nourish her body, but it was the gesture itself that nourished her spirit. She touched the bag gently, as though she could feel the thoughtfulness woven into each piece, the intention behind the small act that had reminded her she was not invisible, that she was still part of a larger world that had not forgotten her. She felt seen, truly seen, in a way that transcended mere acknowledgement. She felt valued, loved, and needed, if only for a fleeting moment. Later, she sat back in her chair, the warmth of the afternoon sun stretching across the room, and let the memory of the encounter linger. The house no longer felt quite so empty. The walls, once silent witnesses to her solitude, seemed to echo the kindness she had been shown. She reflected on the power of a single act, small yet profound, and how it could ripple through the heart like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope again, to believe in the quiet possibility that love and attention could arrive when least expected, and that even in a life marked by years of routine and silence, moments of connection could still find her. Emotional reflection. The story closes on a touching realization that love never fades even when the world seems to move on without you. She sits quietly in her favorite chair, the soft afternoon sunlight spilling across her lap, warming her hands as they rest on the worn fabric. Her eyes wander across the room, taking in the familiar corners that have witnessed decades of life. Laughter, tears, celebrations, and farewells. Each object, each photograph, each faded memento holds a story, a fragment of the life she has lived and the love she has given so freely. The house is still now, quieter than it has ever been, yet in that silence, she feels the echoes of all the moments that shaped her, all the relationships that molded her heart, and all the love she carried that never diminished, even when it seemed unacknowledged. She thinks of the years when her home was filled with the hum of life. The walls had been alive with her children's laughter, their footsteps racing through hallways, their small voices calling her name with urgency and affection. She remembers the days when she held her grandchildren on her lap, telling them stories she had invented just for them, weaving life lessons into tales of magic, adventure, and hope. She had poured herself into every corner of their world, shaping memories, building trust, and providing comfort that could weather any storm. And though time had stretched and pulled her family in different directions, the love she had given did not waver. It remained, silent but steadfast, waiting patiently like a candle in the dark. Her mind drifts to her late husband, the man whose laughter still seems to echo faintly in the hallways of the home they built together. She remembers how his presence filled the rooms with warmth and certainty, how his gentle words soothed anxieties, how his small acts of love, a touch, a glance, a shared joke, reminded her daily that she was cherished. Even though he is no longer by her side, the love they shared lingers in the air. She closes her eyes and can almost hear him calling her name, a soft reassurance that transcends the boundaries of time and space. Her children, now grown, are busy with their own lives, and she has learned to accept their absence without bitterness. Yet, there are moments when she feels the sharp ache of longing, the quiet sadness of not being needed in the same way she once was. But even in that longing, she realizes that love does not diminish with distance. It simply transforms, taking new shapes, moving quietly beneath the surface, visible only when one pauses to notice its presence. A recent visit from a neighbor's child, a small act of kindness with groceries delivered unexpectedly, had reminded her that she is still seen, still valued, still capable of inspiring connection. That single gesture reverberated through her heart, illuminating a truth she had always known but sometimes forgot amid the silence. Love never truly disappears. It may lie dormant, hidden beneath years of routine, grief, or loneliness, but it waits, patiently and faithfully, ready to be felt again. As the evening light begins to fade, she reflects on her life with a mixture of pride and quiet humility. She has loved deeply, sacrificed freely, and lived fully, even when the world seemed to move on without noticing. She realizes that love is not measured by daily presence, by constant attention, or by public recognition. It is measured by the impact it leaves behind, the warmth it instills in hearts, the memories that endure, and the gentle influence that continues to guide and nurture long after the voices grow quieter and the footsteps fade. Her eyes linger on the photographs of her family, and she smiles softly, a tear tracing the curve of her cheek. In each picture, each memory, she sees proof that love endures. Even when she feels forgotten, overlooked, or alone, she carries the truth that she has shaped lives with her devotion, her patience, and her unwavering heart. Love, she understands now, is eternal. It exists beyond presence, beyond acknowledgement, beyond the constraints of time and space. It is in every memory, every gesture, every quiet act of care she has ever given, and it continues to live, silently but powerfully, in the hearts of those she has touched. The quiet moments of reflection remind her that love is a force that never diminishes. She recognizes that absence does not erase the bonds forged through care and sacrifice. Memories of laughter, warmth, and affection serve as proof that her love remains alive. Small acts of kindness, even from strangers, illuminate the enduring impact of her generosity. Love is not measured by constant attention, but by the lasting impression it leaves in the hearts of others. Even in solitude, she feels the presence of love surrounding her, unseen yet palpable. The house, filled with echoes of the past, becomes a sanctuary of emotional continuity. Through reflection, she understands that love transcends distance, time, and circumstance. The connections she nurtured continue to shape lives, silently affirming her worth and presence. In recognizing the persistence of love, she finds peace, validation, and a quiet joy that carries her forward.